Thank you very much for joining us here today at the Somali Heritage Week. My name is Yunus Deko. I'll be the moderator for this particular session, and I would like to invite the panelists who will be with me discussing COVID-19 and the impact it has had on the art industry. So, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to call Banazir Mohammed, who is one of our panelists. Banazir Mohammed, please join us. Also with us today will be Mweni Lundi. Karibu sana. During this discussion, we also have Najma Salah. She is an author and an artist. I would also like to invite Abdisalam Osman, who is one of our panelists, to join us on stage. And last but not least, Nelmo Onyeri. Karibu sana, please join us on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, I think you are all aware of the impact the COVID-19 had. We will be discussing with the panelists before COVID how the art industry has been. During COVID, what we have learned, the challenges that have been there, and how the art industry has been affected over that period. Also, ladies and gentlemen, allow me in praying for the family of the director of Dalsan TV, whose mother died yesterday. May Allah rest her soul in Jannah. Allow me in praying for the family during this trying moment. And directly we will kick off. Allow me first to tell you a bit about our panelists who are here with us. For those of you who are not aware of the titles, towards my far left is Nelmo Munyuri, better known as Nelmo Newsong. He's a recording and performing artist and social entrepreneur focused on changing the world through music and promoting creative work. Nelmo is the founder and the executive director for Mukuru Youth Initiative, an organization that uses art to advocate for social change. My brother Abdisalam Osman is the founder and the creative director at Mint Press Limited. He is a poet and author of the collection The Silent Scream and a children's book, The Fairy Kind Hunter and the Two Parrots. Najma Salah is the author of her Escapades, a poetry collection, as well as a spoken word artist and a writer of many genes, mainly focusing on minority culture and issues affecting the youth. Banazir Mohammed is a young, enthusiastic gender activist who has developed a community organization called Silverline in Kenya with a passion for storytelling and theater. I also think she's an award-winning activist who has used art as a tool to start discussions on very sensitive topics such as sexual and reproductive health. And last but not least, towards my far right is Mweni Lundi. She's an artist, director and trainer of participatory education theatre and co-founder of the Orecha Collective, a platform working with the diversity of the artistic genes to bring audiences into conversations on issues of collective interest. At the end of our panel discussion, our audience will have the opportunity to ask questions after the end of this, towards the end of this conversation. I would like to start with Banazir. How has the COVID-19 impacted the work around reproductive health and issues that you have been doing before COVID? How were things before COVID and after COVID, and how has that affected in terms of responding to the challenges that are there?
Thank you, Yunus. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. When COVID started, I was working as a teacher at that time. I was working at a high school, girls' school. And I remember we were preparing for the national drama festivals. So we had practiced all through, from January, February. And so now when the sessions were starting, COVID happened. So you've trained the kids, they're supposed to be going for their first levels, and that was the first time that school was participating in drama festivals, something that was killed before. And now when they get the opportunity, COVID happens. And I think national festivals have resumed this year. So that has been the biggest challenge for me working as a teacher. As a gender activist, I think when it comes to the aspect of art, there's always the need for congregation. There's always the need for people to come and listen to the art. And that was something that was disrupted by COVID because we were not able to have our sessions as normal. So we shifted to having our sessions online other than having the audience come together. Thank you.
So I still want to ask you one more question on gender-based violence. Has there been an increase or has there been, what are the statistics of gender-based violence during COVID-19 and how has that affected women especially?
I think during the COVID period we had the highest increase in the number of unmonitored, untold cases of gender-based violence because these women were now subjected to live with the perpetrators. They were subjected to stay with the men the gender that was perpetrating the different type of gender violence. And this is both men and women. And so the chances of this person reporting any case of gender-based violence was difficult because there was limited mobility. People would not move to different stations. Generally, there was also an increase in emotional torture and the aspect of mental health because everyone was going through problems during COVID. People had lost jobs, people had lost opportunities, people had lost family members, and so you wouldn't find an easy chance to share your problems with someone who would.
Muni, I want to come to you as an artist and someone who uses art as a form to bring audience into conversations about various things. How has it affected you in terms of mobilization, in terms of putting these people together? At a time when people could not come together, there were quite a lot of restrictions during COVID-19 period.
Thank you. Well, probably I will start by saying that in the last few years it's been a bit difficult to put up projects around using participatory theatre because one, there is or has been very little investment in terms of getting funding for theatre projects, whether it's just trying to put a play on stage. It's taking more work to fundraise to put a theatre performance together. It becomes even more complicated when you want to do a participatory piece of theatre, especially because part of the work that we do has a lot to do with community work. And so this is the space where we'll talk about gender-based violence, this is where we'll talk about reproductive health, this is where we'll talk about issues of governance, and so on. So that becomes doubly difficult in terms of getting funds to put those together as projects. So we have not been doing a lot of participatory theatre work. And have just been beginning to look at how do we do this in this kind of space where you're not sitting in the chief's baraza. So we've been exploring more and more in terms of when I'm doing my straight or conventional performance in a space like this, how can I make it more participatory? How can I make the audiences engage more? So by the time COVID was coming in, that's the space we were at. So it made it even more difficult because the rest of the world was talking about theatres going dark in terms of basically you could not gather to watch a performance. You could not go in and sit in this kind of space. It didn't matter. By that time, we were still trying to figure out what is safe distancing, what is, how do we deal with the issue of masks, how are we going to do this as theatre performers, how will we work together without touching each other because of the kind of performance we're doing. How are we going to work wearing masks and yet we want people to be able to see our faces. So it was a very fluid situation that we found ourselves in, with beginning to work with very little information in terms of what do we need to do to be able to protect ourselves. The government was also struggling in terms of should people gather, should they, what's the issue of masks, how much should a mask be, how many people have access to masks, and so on and so forth. So there are a lot of questions when COVID came. And it is only much later that then there was an issue of no gathering. This is the number of people who can gather in one space. For the use of this space, for example, we were told you can have, you have to have a performance that has less than 10 people, preferably 5 or less. And so then you have to be saying, what kind of performance do I want to put up? What kind of script will give me less than 10 people, or will give me 5 people, or will give me 2 people, or 1 person? And so even the space was, even while that was happening in terms of the number of people who can gather, the space had already been closed down. So we would not even have access to the space in terms of putting up a performance. So it was a big challenge. It was a big challenge for us because this, and especially as a theatre artist who works not online but in a physical space with a live audience, it was really, really difficult because you're used to feeling people in the audience, you're used to seeing people in the audience, and suddenly you don't have that space where you have an audience. And so suddenly everybody's talking about, oh, let's go online. But what does that mean? What does going online as a theatre artist mean? You no longer have a live audience. So am I still doing theatre if I don't have a live audience? When I go online, it means that either I am operating live and there's an audience who are gathering to watch that performance, or I have recorded that performance for people to watch it. So there have been many questions, and there's still many questions in terms of, so what is theatre for us now? When we don't have a live audience, when we're recording to go online, they still, people ask you, okay, so now am I doing film or am I doing theatre? If I've recorded it, what am I doing? so we had to ask ourselves a lot of questions. But again, there was also the challenges in terms of, it wasn't just what is the form I'm using now. Am I still, do I call myself a theatre artist? How do I define myself? There was also the question of, yes, it's all well and good to say let's go online, but did we have the means to go online? Do you have bundles to go online? You have a phone. Are you able to use your phone either to be able to record yourself to go live, to go into a Zoom meeting? Where's the money coming from if you're not performing and making money? Yeah. So there are a lot of assumptions were made in terms of, oh, this is easy to do. Just go online. But what does going online mean for you in terms of a performer? Because now you're working from a camera. And that is just, the assumption is that we can do that very easily. No, it takes a different kind of skill for you to be able to do that, to work using a camera.
So has the digital, this digital making, has it really helped? Do you think it has helped in a way?
Yes, it has. As difficult as it was, I'm saying those are just some of the challenges. But yes, it opened up spaces. It opened up spaces that helped us, one, be able to do the work that needed to be done. It helped us in terms of, and when I'm talking about the work that needed to be done, it was a very difficult period for us as humanity. And one of the things that theatre does is to help us reflect, to help us make sense of life. That is how, this is what makes theatre transformative. This is what makes theatre such a powerful, or performance or art such a powerful form. Because it helps you reflect, it helps you gain different perspectives on a particular issue. So it helps people in terms of, what is this that is happening to us now as human beings? What is this that's happening to us as a country? Because each country was going through different kinds of spaces in relation to COVID. What the global north was going through was very different from what Africa was going through. So it helped us in terms of, because you'll find that a lot of work that was being done by artists, whether it was music, whether it was the visual arts, whether it was theater, poetry, you name it, there was a lot that people were thinking through in terms of what COVID is and what it means to us as humanity and what it means to us as individuals. So there was work that was being done that helped us. But it also helped, not just in terms of helping other people think through, but I think in terms of mental health, being able to go online or being able to digitize helped us in a very profound way, because it helped us in terms of our mental health as artists, that you were still able to perform, you're still able to call yourself a performer, whatever the form or whatever the medium was that you were using. So it kept the spirit going, and that for us was really, really important. Because you find that when we talk about mental health for humanity at that time, and for especially what was going on in Africa with the little or no help that you were getting from our government and from beyond, where we're seeing vaccines being given out, we are seeing vaccines being thrown because they have expired, and yet you're thinking, I actually might have to go somewhere and buy and pay for, and yet this is what is happening around me. So anyway, so you'll find that all that was affecting us as human beings. And you'll find that even, and worse still was for a lot of the artists who couldn't go out and work. So there was an increase in terms of people who are affected by mental health among artists, which is still going on until now, that is not being readily addressed, and is a big issue for us as artists, but also as Kenyans and as humanity in terms of the trauma that we've gone through because of COVID. And so we're still working, trying to use theater and other different art forms to try and address this and deal with it in the world.
Yes, indeed, and many artists lost jobs, and there was no much activity going on during COVID-19. I want to come to Delmo. You've been centered around advocacy, using art as a medium. How has it been for you in terms of using advocacy at this COVID-19 period? How did advocacy work got affected?
Maybe I think it was affected was positively and negatively. The only difference is that for me, being a performing artist, of course I have to be on stage. For so many other artists that we work with, you had to find other ways of doing it, because for us, we used to congregating people whenever we're talking about different issues. But also, on a positive side, is that after COVID, during COVID, what happened is that we had already prepared so many things that we do. We have an annual festival that for the last 3 years we've not been able to do. But what we did, we shifted our focus into now addressing the real issue that was happening at that time, creating awareness and basically breaking down, because it was really hard, as Mwini mentioned, people getting to just understand what does it mean by social distancing. So for us, we were able to leverage on that and use art to be able to even create awareness for people to understand in a very easy way on how are you able to use or like basically on how we're able to break down the very complex MOH guidelines or very complex WHO guidelines and things that people who should have understood about COVID. And we broke down into music, we broke down into short films, we broke down into very easy relatable messaging. And of course it changed because then now we were used to engaging a lot with people on a one-on-one. We were told no, right now we cannot give you money and you start like having one-on-one meeting with people. We cannot give you money and start having meetings that basically do not follow the guidelines. So we had, and also online, because like for example, coming from Guru and understanding not everyone has, or majority of people don't have access to enough data for them to be able to be online, to even watch something that is being streamed, to engage a lot online. we had to rethink on how we get to engage. And of course, so many people shifted online, but then it wasn't as easy. So for us, we had to find other ways that were not as easy and were not as easy to even coordinate. Were not as easy to even engaging with people. So that's one of the ways that shifted our focus from how we directly engage with people to now looking for other ways to be able to do that. And also creatively, because also for us we co-create a lot. We work with people to even co-create. For example, the issues that are happening is just sitting and writing a song about a certain issue. It's also co-creating, talking to the community, talking to different people, holding those forums for us to be able to create. Now we cannot be able to do that. We had to now shift to online, which was not as organic as possible, because then you cannot be able to understand what you cannot see someone's feelings when they're trying to explain about a certain issue. So it threw us off a little bit for some time until now you had no option. We were waiting for 1 month for COVID, for us to be done with COVID. We waited for 2 months, 3 months, it came to a year, and we realize right now you just have to change on how you do things, and we didn't have an option, because now we are 3 years down and not yet out of the woods 100%. So basically, yeah, and of course there is even more resources, because for you to produce a music or a video, for example, it's not cheap, because then it's not like when you just need a song and then you go on stage. But right now you need to produce a music video for people to even watch. You need more data for you to start sharing, and you need to have that network for you to be able to make sure that whatever you're producing gets to the people. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll come to Najima in a minute. Absalam, as the creative director at Mint Press Limited, I want to know, during COVID-19, the people needed access to information in terms of knowing about COVID-19, the protocols, guidelines. So how did artists play a role in terms of messaging that would help people understand and relate to COVID-19 in terms of vaccination? There has been a lot of propaganda, what we now call fake news everywhere, in as much as it might be through news or through information. Take us through the messaging and the creative industry, the role they have played in terms of helping people understand COVID-19 better.
Assalamu alaikum. Well, I think let's talk of 2019 and 2020 in comparison. In 2019, I personally did a lot of things, and crossing into 2020, it kind of began to be something of an expected time in terms of what COVID did and how people perceived it and how, say, the government has reacted towards it. As artists, especially when you yourself is dependent on creating for you to earn, like you have to create for you to earn something, and for you to be accepted by, say, the people who follow your work, as a writer, as a poet, as whatever you do as an artist. To transition from that period into a period that is now considered very dangerous, and also it took a bit of time for people to accept that this is a reality, and it's something that we cannot just wake up in the morning and feel like we're not going to wear a mask. I remember first week of the government actually saying, oh, you guys have to wear a mask, and at first it was just a request, like you have to protect yourself, you have to do this, you have to do that, until I think a week or 2 weeks later it became mandatory. And now, like, if you walk on the roads without a mask, you get arrested. And something as small as people actually realigning themselves into a path that is, when every other week the health CS goes up to the podium and starts updating people, you feel like this is just, going to stretch. It's going to go further and further and further. Now the creative industry started to realize that of course we are going to be stuck here for a while. So how are we going to respond to that? How are we going to create something that is going to at least tell the mother who has no phone or the villager who has no idea what's going on in the big city to actually follow guidelines that are going to protect them? So many, I think, international NGOs, including the government, started giving out ideas and guidelines into which now the artists, I remember one of our colleagues now did something that initially in the arts industry felt like we're not going to get there. It got to a point where now they were doing a program that was aired live on television, and the things that they were doing in the studio are things that were supposed to be done outside. So you can understand the difference that creates. So there are, of course, a few other things people have done in terms of, I don't know if you do remember, putting together 2019 and 2020 and the difference that was in between. Now the shift of digital creators was massive. I don't know if you understand, because there is Instagram, there's now later on TikTok, and the people that were dependent on going to theaters and performing and creating are now using their phones to actually create videos to post online. Now the problem is a huge percentage of those people are not going to survive, let's just be honest, because consumers are receptive to a certain level. And if you're going to produce something that they're not going to like, it's hectic for you to get up every morning and create something to post online and expect people to watch. So it creates that imbalance, of which still now, some people went into different paths and they have never came back up until now. Now, what is the artist going to do? The one who has always dependent on selling something to earn. I think we're still not 100%, like my friend said, we're not. A lot of things have been lost in between, and we're still trying to recover. So, but then yes, of course, I do acknowledge the fact that so many things have been done, and there's always progress in everything. Sorry.
Najma, let me come to you. Abdi Salam mentioned about resources. Has the COVID-19 period created new avenues for artists to get more resources? For example, having their books on the internet instead of getting a hard copy on Kindle and other platforms. Are there other channels and ways of getting resources, or COVID-19 totally affected artists and how they generate money?
Assalamu alaikum. Okay, I will say this positively possible. I think that every time that I stand on stage, I not only stand as Najma, I stand as a Muslim woman, Somali, all of those things. So my thought and my direction of my work is always, how can more people discover that, oh, like Somali people, we can do more, Muslim women, we can do more. So I think positively, I think it has affected artists and Somali and Muslim positively, if you ask me, because one, we could not be in a gathering, yes, but there are so many Muslim brothers who created positive spaces, especially on Instagram. I think we had, what is his name, Dala, Mweshimiwa Ali Noor. They created such a positive space where every other night there was Somali artists who could come and perform online, you at the comfort of your home. You don't need to show your face, you don't need to show anything. So as much as people think that it was a negative thing, I think it affected us, specifically Somalis, positively. And also in already the same notion of creating spaces, I came across something that was called residencies and changed my life completely. I think this has been one of my best years as a Somali Muslim artist, if you put it that way. I came across organizations and things that are called residencies. It's like a link where you apply as an artist and then they go through all of these categories, they choose people and stuff. Yeah, so in between that, I was also looking for spaces which were very allowing me to be myself without losing my originality or without losing the things that I believe in, but also being inclusive of Somali people and stuff. I didn't want to go there and be, oh, she's the only Somali girl, you know, she's trying to make the name for herself. No, I'm trying to make a name for all of us. So I was going into spaces that I wanted to know they allowed more people like me, not only me because I already like people know who Drops of Melody is, it doesn't matter, but also created spaces for people who are not known, for people who, so yeah, going into those spaces actually, we met with artists from at least over 20 countries, including Somalia, and most of the artists were from Somalia, so they came to Kenya and we did a big event. So I think that was positive because also the residencies, they took all the COVID protocols, everybody had to go through the medical procedures and stuff to make sure that everybody is safe. And then they created a safe space where artists, we can use this time to see what your art can do next. Yes, you can be a writer. Everybody here can wake up tomorrow and decide to be a writer. But what does that writing or that, well, like your mode of art or medium that you use make you develop your art into something else? So yeah, I think it was mainly positive for me and for my community.
And funding, were there more other avenues to get to sell, for example, your work?
Definitely, because one, as much as we could not sell like books, I'm an author and the books are out there. But yeah, as an author, it was easier now because people saw my work online, but also they wanted something that was more tangible and something that, you know, they can keep even after like people decide, oh, you know, COVID is over, I need to go back to work. So yeah, it was easy to send books for deliveries and things like that because now people could not come to stage, could not buy tickets to come and see me perform, but they could eventually get in touch with my work. So I think it made work things easier, but also so many people started creating videos and sharing online and attending more online events and creating specific events which were more accommodating of like the pandemic and everything. So I think it affected me very positively. Yes.
Benazir, as a social activist, more funding has been going towards COVID-19 in terms of communication materials, in terms of making sure that people have access to information. As an activist who has been working and has been very passionate about bringing topics such as sexual and reproductive health to light, has it affected you? Do you think that more funding has been going towards that way? And post-COVID-19, do you think things are the same or it's now getting better?
Thank you, Eunice. I think COVID-19 has encouraged new trends. And as a Somali community, I think we have seen a lot of people embracing the TikTok culture, which is both can be used positively and can be used negatively, just like any other social media platform. Ourselves as an organization, we have seen the shift of many of our donors into the creative space because we focus more on sensitization and capacity building of community members. And this is particularly on sexual and gender-based violence and issues of peace and security. So these are very tough topics. These are topics that you can't just engage communities directly without you preparing them. And we've really tried to use the aspect of drawing and creative sessions. This is, so how we do our sessions, we bring young girls together. For example, if we have a sexual and reproductive health training, we bring the girls together, or the boys, both of them, in different spaces, and we provide them with drawing materials, writing materials, and we let each child cultivate their own way of sharing a message. For example, one of the things that really inspired me was, there was a young girl that we were training we were sensitizing at some point, and she drew a butterfly, just the normal, my type of drawing, and then she puts in some droplets of blood. So no. So what we do is when the child draws, whatever they draw, or if the child is not an artist, or I mean, it's not someone that draws, they can write, or they can just whatever they can color, whichever way they want to share the information. And I called this girl just to myself, and I told her, what is this that you had drawn? What was the information you're sharing? And she told me, I'm bleeding inside. Out there, probably everyone thinks I'm happy and excited, but there's something that is really paining me and I can't share. So we then had a session together with her, conversed pole and just try to encourage her, get to know what's the problem, and understand beyond what we can see. And you see, if that child was brought into a session like this, for example, she wouldn't be able to share that. So that's how we're trying to use art to bring out topics that are very difficult for people to engage in, and then have closed sessions with these vulnerable young girls and boys, and have closer sessions with them. One thing I would like to talk about is theater and religion. And myself, I am not a performing artist. I am more of a script writer. I just try to push things from behind. So sometimes when we're doing this, now that COVID happened, we moved into quote unquote the film industry. When you're trying to bring out a concept, for example, we had a story on countering violent extremism, and we're working closely with one of our donors, and they really wanted us to push into the aspect of film and try to create content on how this issue of radicalization was being done. I tried to encourage young girls to be part of that session and act. It was hard. But then you still find the same girls performing content on TikTok, and when you want to use the same content for community sensitization to bring information to the community, becomes very difficult. And we've seen people try to use maybe my faith doesn't allow, my religion doesn't allow. I'm very conscious of that. I'm very conscious of how I create the script. I know the type of interaction that should be on stage and the type of interaction that is not allowed by my faith. So sometimes I think there's need to have constant sensitization on what art is, and how we can demystify art and religion, and how we can use art to sensitize communities, despite the fact that we are still a very conservative community. Funding has shifted to the creative culture, I would say, and this is because we are now a generation that doesn't really read a lot. Sadly, we consume 2 seconds, 3 seconds of content, and if we don't feel satisfied, we scroll. So now having the same information, for example, we used to have workshops, you bring people together, you talk the whole day, it's not relevant anymore. But when we shifted from having theater sessions, having songs, we bring in young boys and girls, they act the same content we would have trained. And then we let the audience engage. What have you learned from this? What happened to this child? Was this child being radicalized? It becomes easier. So yeah, Eunice, I would say there's a shift of the funding from the normal way we used to do things to now the creative industry. Yeah.
Thank you. Winnie, I want to come to you and perhaps maybe tell us a little bit about the cultural changes that has happened in terms of post-COVID, pre-COVID and post-COVID-19. Cultural changes that have happened. You mentioned changes in the digital landscape. Are there other things out of the art industry that has affected our culture? For example, in terms of how we interact, in terms of our communication capabilities?
That's a very, very good question. I mean, inevitably, across the world, our cultures shifted, sometimes dramatically, or in general, especially post-COVID. There have been things that have changed, including how we interact. I think a very simple thing. I don't know how many people are still able to, automatically what we used to do for a lot of people is that when you're greeting your close friends or family, you'll automatically go and hug them. But now more and more, given the amount of time we have spent being told, go tatu. Amasalimiana kwa mbali, si lazima kusane. You find yourself doing that more and more as opposed to automatically going to hug somebody. So we have learned new ways or we're learning new ways of being. I think the other thing that happened is a very simple thing that you just talked about. We shifted how we entertain ourselves. That I will not automatically think of, let me go to the theater and watch a play. I'm more likely to sit at home and watch something on the video or watch a movie on my own, or I'll read a little bit more than I used to. Yeah. So the ways in which we entertain ourselves have also shifted in a little way. I think one of the other greatest things that happened during that time, you talked about gender-based violence and how a lot of that was unreported during that time, and it was that you were already living with the perpetrator and there was nowhere you could go. And in that way, I think we have we learned another way in which I think we frightened ourselves in terms of how we didn't know one another so well. And I don't know if as a result of that, we have tried to look at ourselves and how we interact with other people. How well do you know the people you live in the house with? You realize, wait, I haven't spent so much time in this house. Am I friends with the people I live in the house with? Do we talk? Or do we all just sit and watch the TV and everybody disappears to go and sleep? Do we eat together? I think there was a consciousness of the things that are wrong in our relationships, the things that are missing in our relationships. To what extent we have dealt with this or have started to address this, I am not sure. But I think consciously we know that, wow, that was a difficult time in terms of living with people in the same house. Hapo ndio unajua hii nyumba ni ndogo sana. Yeah. So you find people are going and sitting outside. Those who had cars would go and sit in the car until evening. Anangoja watoto walale ndio ingie kwa nyumba. Because you're not used to talking to these people, you're not used to interacting with these people. So in a way we learned a little bit more about, okay, not learned, let me say we reflected. We reflected a little bit more about who we are as people and how we interact and how we engage with other people and how we engage with the world. I think one of the other things that hit us, especially in Africa at that time, and you see all these things are already happening before, it's just that we never really had the time to stop and think, wow, even though tunaishi, yeah, all these things were there, but being able to stop and see them every day, being able to stop and actually think about them struck us and traumatized us a little bit. And what even traumatized us a little bit more, I think, as a country and as a region, as a continent, was just realizing how disconnected we are from the rest of the world. I don't know if other people felt this, but I think first as a Kenyan, as a human being in my house, as a human being in this country, as a human being who's an African, I think I felt disconnected from the rest of the world because they were going on, guys were getting vaccinations, guys were, life was going on, they were being subsidized, you're losing your job, there's a system, there's a social welfare system that supports you, but here we were just on our own. I think the thing that struck us was when the president said, and I think this had happened a little bit earlier, but it came back later to taunt and traumatize us, was the whole idea of where security is concerned, you're on your own.
I think we are 4 minutes past the time we were supposed to end this panel discussion. I'll now go to our audience if anyone has a question.
When we were told to go back home, I was able to continue my education, and now I'm a fourth-year student. Thanks to technology, the tech industry has helped the students to continue their studies. We're able to take our semester through Zoom, Team App, Google Classroom, and other platforms. So, apart from the disadvantages or the cons that COVID came with, don't you think COVID came with some benefits? Yeah, of course it came with a lot of disadvantages. I mean, like people have been fired from their jobs. People could not access the physical fitness facilities like gym and etc. Don't you think COVID came with some benefits too? Thank you.
Alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Fatuma Ahmed Ogle. Will I say it in Swahili or English?
Any will do.
Okay. My question is like, do we, like Somalis, normally do like health awareness, and where exactly? Because there's a lot of things that I could also I could have helped with, like sharing more about health, and also about the sexual like things that ladies and boys come across, like the students who are in schools, and also about the uses of the methods or the stuff that are being used when they're doing the sexual things, because there are some people who are illiterate, they don't know how to use those stuff, and it's good for them.
It's not a question per se, but it's a reaction to what he said. For me, COVID was a lot more of a blessing. Blessing is a bad word to relate to COVID, but I would say COVID opened a lot of doors for me. I graduated in 2016, and this is Kenya, we've been looking for work and all that. So just when COVID was starting in 2020, my parents had convinced me to join college to train to be a teacher. And I didn't want that. So COVID happened, we were told to go home, then I got a nice job with an NGO, raising awareness about COVID, and then the job ended, and then I got out of my comfort zone and started doing other business. And I greatly attribute all the success I've had in the last 2-3 years to COVID, because I feel like if COVID had not happened, I might not be where I am today. And I'm really glad I got to come here. And I really wish I would be a Somali in my next life.
Bismillah. My name is Dr. Sheikh Muhammad Shakur. I'm glad to be here. I was supposed to be here in the morning, but being Sunday, I wasn't able to come. Anyways, I'd like to participate in the good discussion of young fellows here, and we are proud how you are presenting yourself and how you are explaining and sharing your thoughts and experience with us. I'd like to see more young people like you doing. Oh, you're also young, Now, coming back to the issue of what we have learned from COVID-19, from the religious point of view, as a sheikh and as a da'iya, a caller or preacher, there are so many things that we used to take it for granted before COVID. And for example, when we tell people you need to perform your salah, your prayers, and make wudu, ablution, it was difficult for people to do that. And now all of a sudden people are washing their hands with alcohol 10 times a day instead of choosing 5 times a day to make wudu. We were trying to avoid people of opposite sex not to engage in illegal touching and that as a Muslim. And people were not listening, and they were doing all kind of things, and all of a sudden now you even avoid your own parents and your own. So it changed, 360 degree on the other side. We remind people about, as much as you want to do your worldly things and prosper and make more money, don't forget this is after all, you're going to die, you're going to face your Lord, there's going to be questions, there's going to be hell, there's going to be heaven, and so on. And people used to heedlessly, and all of a sudden they see people dying masses, family members, people that we love, and all of a sudden, hey, life's like that. You see your own, parents and siblings, succumb into, and it has become a wake-up call for everybody. We were also teaching family values, to sit together, to talk, to have fun, and all of that, but everybody was busy out there, and you would see people who live in the same household that wouldn't see each other for months, because this one goes early morning, the other one comes late, and all of a sudden, and you would say, hey, how you been doing? I haven't seen, and they live in the same household. Now, COVID-19 brought together. They sit in front of each other for days, months, and so on. They come to know each other, sometimes creating a very positive, sometimes even violence has happened, but at least people come together and they sit together and so on. And then professions have changed, positions, people who were holding positions lost, they said, then that gave them a wake-up call. Hey, perhaps I need to think of something else now. I need to take a course on this and that, because what I was doing now is no longer relevant. So it has really waken up people. It has also shown us that the power of Almighty God, that such a small macroscopic virus that cannot even be seen can change everything into up down and upside down, and that we're so weak and so vulnerable. So for those who believe in God, it shows, give them, I can say, faith, and say there is a mighty out there behind this. So as much as it brought difficulties and pain and death and loss of family members, but on the other side, we have learned a lot. I think we have learned a lot. It has a wake-up call for many of us of how to, from now on, how will I run my life? What will I do? What will be my profession? Is what I'm doing right? And then what Madame said, that we were told you're on your own, and taught us that how will I face if another pandemic erupts, sometimes. So I think there is many things that seem to be very bad and evil, but then sometimes it turns out to be good, and it shapes our future and our life. So we have learned, I think we have learned a lot. These are some of my reflections on what has happened. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thinking of it, it was also, as she said, of course, there are things that came with sorrow, and a lot we see people are really suffering. Not only even health-wise, even people who are not affected, maybe infected with COVID. We saw so many people who could not even have something to eat, because then ways that they were making a living, they could not do it. But also on the other side, very positive. Digitally, I can say and speak for the digital economy. Digitally, I think we did not have an option. Even if you did not know how to use Zoom, you had to learn how to use Zoom, no matter how young or how old, or you have ever seen a laptop or not. I believe now so many people have already met people all over the world just because they had to hold meetings on Zoom. If we could still have that leeway of meeting, then so many people will never have met. But the fact that now you could meet someone miles away, or anywhere in the world, basically, we were able to meet and exchange ideas a lot. The same thing with the education system. Of course, it was a challenge for so many, and of course, there are so many who were left behind, because digitally, there's so many places. Because we know the challenge with this country. We still have kids learning under trees because there's no classrooms. But now, you're being told, now you have to go online for you to learn. There isn't, but we saw so many organizations that try to come and even put up subjects online for anyone to be able to access, but still the access was not there. We saw the former president had to talk to Google to have the balloons, the Google balloons, to make sure there is that 4G accessibility all over the country. And that is something, it was just like a wake-up call to make sure that somebody is able to learn no matter where they are. But also the challenge was that kids were home for ages. And someone like me who work in a youth center, I can tell you it was a challenge, because now you used to seeing kids coming when they close school, but now you have to work overtime because now they're there for a year. You have to find programs for you to engage them. You have to be as creative as possible to make sure that as much as they're engaging in art, also they're getting time, they're finding a space to learn. And that's one of the things we invested was to even put up internet in our space to make sure that kids who will not be able to learn from home since they don't have connection, they can come to the space and do that. And basically, to a certain extent, and what the creative economy. Right now, there's so many comedians are online. Churchill is not as popular as it used to be, isn't it? Yeah, you have to go to Churchill recording every Sunday, every Thursday. But right now, you have to watch Crazy Kena and everyone else online, and they're making a living. We saw them during the Jamhuri celebrations, making all the comics at the Jamhuri. Something that will never have happened if we did not shift to digital.
I want to come to Benazir. There's a question by Fatuma about the health awareness and the reproductive health, and how perhaps maybe she can use these technologies to bring about some of these things that are not much talked about by the Somali community.
Thank you, Eunice. Actually noted that down. Yes, Fatuma, there are opportunities to sensitize community, and especially on issues of sexual and reproductive health. On 26th, we will be having an activity in Garissa that is for women, a platform for women to come together and share small businesses, which are their passions that they have transformed to businesses. So that would be an opportunity for you to come and we can work together on the same. There are also other ways we can engage, so I will definitely engage you after the session. Thank you.
So I think it's up to us to encourage our children to be what they want to be. Of course, you have to police them. That is understandable. But then policing a child into becoming a model of what you want is going to end up being a child that is going to hate his parent. So allowing your child to be what they want to be is going to give you really satisfaction when you realize this child is going to be what he was meant to be. So I think parents raising the children and us also realizing that it's up to us to create. That's it.
Thank you very much. Muda now haunasi. We are 30 minutes past the time that we were supposed to end this session. I'll start from my right. Please, 2 minutes of parting shot, and then we'll close this session. Thank you.
Okay, my parting shots are maybe just around 3 quick issues, which we talked about, and I just wanted to add a few things to that as closing remarks. One is the question of what are the benefits. Well, somebody had asked the question of, we've talked a lot about the challenges, the disadvantages of COVID. What are the benefits? I think for us, COVID was a wake-up call, and it removed us from our comfort zone. We realized the world has to change, and for us to survive this world, we need to change and we need to adapt. So we stopped taking for granted the jobs that we have. We lost some of the jobs we had, so we had to rethink what and how we're going to survive. And so people started doing things and looking for things to do that they would never have considered before. But the person who was acting discovered that they could also write. They discovered that they could be comedians, not just a full play. They discovered that I can actually do a solo play. I don't have to look for 10 people to participate with me to be able to put up that play. So we diversified as human beings. We found ways of surviving within that difficult time. And I think that the instinct for survival was woken up, especially when we faced our mortality, that I could drop dead anytime now. So in the meantime, what is it? How can I live my life meaningfully? What am I leaving behind? he talked about leaving legacies. So I think that for us is something very positive that we took away, having survived, and especially for us Africans, because I think for me and I think for a lot of other people, there was the fear of, if other people are dying like that, what's going to happen here in Africa? Si tutakufa kama nzi. And we didn't. And I think that speaks, it just leaves me speechless in terms of how we survived that period. Something else was on the question of messaging, which I thought would be important to mention, was yes, there was COVID happening around us and there was the need to message. As he said, Nelmo said, break it down into biteable pieces for people to understand. But I think we have a bigger question to answer in terms of messaging, where we were told very clearly that, we have to coordinate our messages, we have to speak in the same voice. But beyond the message of health, because COVID was not just like HIV hit us as an epidemic and a lot of other things that happen in this country and in this continent, it's not just a question of health. It's a question of governance. It's a question of who are we as a people, as citizens? What is our right as citizens? So the bigger questions were not being looked at because we were confined to, let's speak to COVID as a matter of health. And yet, when we're telling people, wash your hands, wear masks, where are these coming from? So we were not addressing the larger picture or the whole that was affecting us under the pandemic as we should have in terms of messaging. So yes, we were confined. And then the third was a question that you asked her about resources. Where were resources going? And yes, you said that there were resources, but when the example you gave, you talked about we are able to do theater now, we are using creativity, we are using cultural activities. But you see, that is within the context of the larger that you're doing, which is reproductive health. We still have a problem when it comes to the creative economy, because we're saying, yes, it's the fashionable thing that we're talking about now, or the manifesto of Kenya Kwanza talks about putting forward and promoting the creative economy. But are we investing in it? We are simply saying, oh, young people will now get employed under the creative economy. How are we creating those jobs? They will not create themselves out of nowhere. So money was diverted to mitigate against COVID, and we're still suffering from now the same problem, because now where money would have come back, because now the people who fund cultural activities, the people who fund theater, let's say the arts, have not been our government. These are other countries that are funding the arts, but their money went back home. Their money has not come back. Their money has now gone to Ukraine. So we are still in a hard place when it comes to the arts, in terms of who's investing in the arts.
Thank you very much. I think I'll put my parting shot in 3 points. Number one is use content to educate. And this goes to all, I'm sure there are a number of content creators here. In as much as we're trying to entertain communities, let us try to also educate our community on issues that are very sensitive to us. The second one is grab the space. I think in the art industry, there's no one who provides you with a platform. You have to take up the space and showcase what you have. And then lastly is monetize your creativity. Make sure when you're setting up because art needs a plan, you just don't get into it. Your final goal has to be monetizing your artwork. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I would like to add what my sister says. She said that you have to create opportunities, and this is specifically to my Hoyo and Abos. Please allow us to access these spaces, because most of the time people from our community are like, this space is not for Muslims, like this specific place that you want to access is not for Somali community or is not for someone of your caliber, but what is our caliber? If we do not have the chance to access those opportunities, who will know that artists exist in Somali communities? Who will know that we have great writers, very outspoken people with things to share to the world? If you guys do not allow us as your children to have access to these spaces, to approach these spaces with a positive mind without losing our identity, we understand that we have been taught to carry ourselves this way as women, as Muslim, as everything. But at the same time, you do not have to limit your children for them to like think a certain way. There's such a bigger world outside that box, outside that things that we can access. Thank you.
Thank you, Najma Absalam.
For me, it's just as simple as letting people do what they like to do. Najma and I have been doing art for close to 7-8 years now. And we've been in spaces where now, when you listen to how people respond to you, the first thing you're told is, you people are not many. You get? By you people, it basically means Somali, yes? So you're told, nyinyi hamfanyangi hizi vitu. So they actually love it. So 2019 we did an event here, right here actually. And we filled this venue, and 90% of the people who came are Somalis. What that means is that creating these spaces means people will show up. And if they show up, means now there is an interest. So our idea now is create more spaces from our own selves to empower a generation that actually feels like it has been second-handed in terms of, we talk of government doing that, doing this, but ourselves, where we come in is very important. So that's my idea. Thank you.
Asante sana.
Yeah, I think like just COVID, one of the hardest things for human beings to change. And one of the hardest things is that we want things that are straight, that systems are already working, and that's why so many parents will tell their kids not to get to creative industry. The only problem that we have is that, of course, we have challenges with our creative industry in the country, but of course, with different actors being able to talk with each other, talk to the entities that are there, being in those spaces is what will streamline that. As I close, I think the only thing I would really want to appreciate is also being here. It's really great being at a Somali cultural event. As a young person born and raised in Mukuru, of course, I've had Somali friends, but I don't think we've ever had a conversation about culture and everything. So being here as a young person, I really appreciate that I get to learn. I know there is not too much time to be able to learn a lot, but I'll be able to learn a few things about culture. I also appreciate, because one of the most important things is to be able to appreciate each cultures. And maybe next year, I'll also come with my contingents of artists from Mukuru, for them also to be able to learn more and also be able to engage and integrate. Asante.
Asante sana Nelly. Tumpigie tena makofi mara nyingine. Mondra yale ya Marwoyin, mabibi na mabwana, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of this panel discussion. On behalf of the panelists, I was your moderator for the day. My name is Eunice Deco. Until we meet again, thank you for being with us here today, and thank you for joining us during this Somali Heritage Week, which has been going on since 2015, I think. And it's an honor and privilege to be here discussing matters that are of importance to the Somali people and people in the creative industry. Asanteni sana, may God bless you. Thank you very much.